Welcome, everybody, to this session on securing your file transfers to Amazon S3 over SFTP, FTPS, and FTP. I'm Smita Sriram. I'm the product manager for AWS Transfer Family. A quick rundown of today's agenda. I'll be giving you an overview of the service, and then we'll go through the key launches for this year. I'll be sharing a couple of customer stories and then diving into our recently launched features. We'll do a quick recap and I'll share some resources for you to take away with to learn more about the service and get started. So let's talk about a few use cases that may be applicable to you. For example, do you need to exchange data with your third parties, like your vendors, your suppliers, your own end customers, or contractors? Or do you need to securely transfer data from a remote location, let's say like a branch office or a data center, with a centralized location so that the data can be used for further processing and analysis? Or just batch transfers of data on a regular basis? In that case, are you running SFTP, FTPS, or FTP servers or operating file transfer platforms in your on-prem environment? If you are, these are some of the challenges that you may be experiencing from managing your own file transfers. You have to keep that environment operating 24/7 and then maintain for capacity. As your data volumes grow, you got to keep up with that storage volume growing and make sure it's performant. Regular patching and auditing so that you are compliant, especially if you are operating in a regulated environment. Keeping that whole infrastructure highly available and scaling to meet your needs in real time. And most importantly, you need to make sure you can easily provide secure access to users to your data. So in short, managing and hosting your own file transfer infrastructure can be challenging, and it's undifferentiated work that keeps your resources away from focusing on your core business needs. If you're operating in a bigger organization, the challenges can be bigger, right? You have different teams or using different tools that just makes governance harder. That inconsistency makes it really hard to track what's happening. The lack of agility with your current solution. Sometimes the data might be locked up in your third-party vendor or in your data center. That makes it hard to use it for any advanced business insights. And then there's costs. Either it's licensing or support or both of using some of the tools that you're using right now. And then as you migrate to the cloud, you may not have sufficient options to migrate this workload. So if you are looking to offload this undifferentiated file transfer heavy lifting, and this is how your infrastructure looks like today, and you want to simplify and modernize, that's the reason we launched AWS Transfer Family at re:Invent 2018. It's a fully managed service for file transfers over SFTP, FTPS, and FTP for Amazon S3. The service provides ways so that you can seamlessly migrate existing integrations. You can maintain them as is. The service provides you with a fully managed in-cloud hosted, highly available endpoint that's globally available so you can take advantage of AWS's global presence. It is secure and compliant and natively integrates with different AWS services. The service is cost effective at 30 cents an hour and 4 cents a gigabyte for uploads and downloads, and simple to use via the AWS Management Console, CLI, API, or you can write infrastructure as code using CloudFormation and other tools. Some of the benefits, I'll go into them. For example, I said it's fully managed. What does that mean? It means it's highly available across up to 3 availability zones. The service scales on demand and can support up to thousands of concurrent users. Let me talk a little bit about seamless migration. So you probably have integrations with your third parties. That's really hard to change when you want to migrate to the cloud. The service provides you with capabilities so that when you migrate this workload, as far as those end users and applications are concerned, there was no change. And it's done because as you move this whole infrastructure to the cloud, you can bring in as much identity of your existing infrastructure as possible. For example, your server's host keys or your own IP addresses, so that as far as your end users are concerned, they don't need to modify any firewalls. You can use existing identity management systems so that even the credentials don't change. As I said, the service is secure and compliant. We have features so that you can block IPs, filter IPs. You can also host the endpoints inside your VPC and also use shared VPC environments. I'll be going into a little more detail on shared VPC environment support in my upcoming slides. The data, you have data encryption options at rest. For example, you can use SSE S3, which is server-side encryption using S3, and AWS KMS. The service is compliant with PCI, HIPAA, SOC, and FIPS. The service natively integrates with different AWS services. For example, the data itself is stored in AWS storage like Amazon S3, and you use CloudTrail and CloudWatch for auditing, login, and if you are integrating an existing identity management system, you will do so using Amazon API Gateway and Lambda. So basically, the value that the service provides is you can seamlessly migrate without impacting any existing workflows, right? So your end users integrate with your endpoint in AWS, the data lands in AWS storage, and now you can use it in your data lake across a broad array of AWS services for machine learning, analytics, databases. And when doing all of this, you don't have to manage that file transfer infrastructure anymore. Here are an example of a few customers using AWS Transfer Family today. And they're using it across a few common use cases. For example, data lakes and analytics or CRM applications. Some of our customers want to share value-added data with their end users, or digital media content distribution. Some ERP systems integrate easily with SFTP so that now that data is in S3 and you can use it with other downstream applications. Or IoT services, you might have different IoT devices in different parts of the world and it communicates via one of these protocols so that the data is in S3 and you can use it for processing and real-time monitoring. So these are just examples of some use cases in how our customers use the service today. So let's talk about our services pace of innovation this year. We started the year by launching support for source IP filtering and being able to attach static IPs so that you can bring your own IPs and keep that IP static so that your end users don't have to keep changing their firewall configurations. A big launch for us was launching support for FTPS and FTP so that if you have additional workloads that need to use these protocols, now you can easily integrate them in AWS. And then we added a few more features, again, for security and compliance based on source IP, increasing auditability for tracing where your data goes and how it's accessed, security policies so that you can control what encryption algorithms are being used. And then we launched support for the service in GovCloud. And most recently, I'm pleased to talk about our services support for EFS, which I'll go into in some of my later slides. The service is available in 16 AWS commercial regions today and GovCloud, and check out our services in scope page for the list of compliances for the service. Let me talk a little bit about a couple of customers and share their stories with you. Discover Financial Services. They, as you know, they are a leading digital bank and payments company, and one of their challenges with their file transfer infrastructure was they were running into occasional failures and downtimes, right, in their infrastructure. This would lead to them having above average latencies that in turn led to them to occasionally miss their service level agreements with their business partners. And above all, there was a huge complexity in maintaining their operations to keep up with their growing demand in their on-prem environment. The solution that they chose to go with was AWS Transfer Family so that they would transfer the data from their internal environment in their on-prem environment directly to Amazon S3. And because of the service's extensible features where you can add more on top of it, they actually built a cloud native outbound transfer solution so that they could deliver the same data back into their on-prem file server. So they had bidirectional data going back and forth. The benefits that they experienced from this architecture was pretty easy for them to set up and manage. And most importantly, they were able to meet the SLAs with their business users. That was key. That was a key driver for this project. And in doing all of this, they reduced operational overhead of managing storage, compute, all of this in their on-prem environment. If you want to read more, I encourage you to check out the blog post that they authored in our storage channel, detailing this whole entire solution. Another customer that I'm excited to talk about is Walla News. So Walla is based in Israel, is a web portal that provides news, email, and searching facilities. So their challenge was they needed to use an on-premises encoder. And that encoder only had limited access to data, as in an interface. It had an FTP interface. And if they kept that on-prem, all the entire media architecture, they were unable to deliver that content. So they are a news provider, right? They need to deliver that news content to their subscribers, their end users. So they didn't have the right resources to deliver that content from their on-prem environment. So they needed that data to be in AWS so that they can take advantage of AWS's content delivery options like Amazon CloudFront. They started off building their own FTP server, but that resulted in a lot of connectivity and latency issues. Earlier this year, we launched support for FTP, as I mentioned before. So they were early adopters of the solution, and they used it for transferring data from their data center encoder to S3. And by doing that, they were able to deliver content to their end users using Amazon CloudFront. The benefits is a scalable solution, right? Because the service auto scales to meet their demand in real time, performant and stable, right? It's highly available across 3 AZs. They no longer needed to maintain any FTP infrastructure, whether in their environment or in the cloud. And I mean, this is the most important benefit, which was they were able to deliver these news feeds to their end users in real time. So if you operate any kind of live broadcast, you know how important it is to be able to get that data in real time to end users. And if you're curious, this is how their end-to-end architecture looks like with the on-prem encoder, writing data to S3 via AWS Transfer Family over a private network because it's FTP, and then cloud being delivered via CloudFront to their end users. Okay, a little bit changing a little bit gears here. Let's do a feature deep dive into some of the key features that we launched recently. Along the lines of networking, we've launched a few features this year that have been important to our customers. We started the year off with launch for VPC security groups for source IP filtering. And then on the lines of same source IP, we added source IP-based access authorization in May. So how does source IP filtering works with VPC security groups? So you host the endpoint within your VPC, and you can attach an elastic IP directly to the endpoint, which means that you can use security groups around that endpoint to filter your end user's internet IP. If you want to go into detail on this solution, we have a blog post that walks you through how you can set this up for SFTP and FTPS. The other feature that we launched was source IP-based access authorization, right? So when your end users log in from a certain IP address, you can use that information to limit access, deny access, control access. So now you can apply fine-grained access controls based on the source IP address. An example use case can be, let's say you have a vendor who needs access to data, who needs to upload data or download data from your bucket using one of the protocols that we support. You may want to give them different access based on where they're logging in from, whether they're logging in from a known location like their office, or they're logging in from their home. right? Another example is if you're giving your employees access over SFTP and there's certain confidential data, and you only want to give them access to that data if they log in from a certain IP address. So you can apply all sorts of access controls based on that source IP using your custom authenticator. We also pass the protocol information. So based on protocol, you may want to give control access to your users. Again, we have a blog post that you can visit and learn more on how to apply this solution in your environment. Most recently, on the 24th of November, we launched support for WAF. WAF is AWS Web Application Firewall. Some of the benefits of using WAF with AWS Transfer Family is you can reduce DDoS risks when you're using internet-facing endpoints and protect your API gateway endpoints against bots and scanners. So if you are running a server, internet-facing server in any environment, right? Odds are there are port scanners and bots, tools, these exploit tools that are looking for, let's say, a specific port, right? Now with this integration, you can reduce exposure to these tools. You can apply geo-blocking if you only want to restrict IPs from a certain country. You can use the AWS's WAF rules database and apply blocking based on the country of origin of that request. Also, you can reduce costs of running API gateway in Lambda. Now, because there's rate limiting feature in WAF, you can control the extent to which your API gateway and Lambda functions are invoked. The way it works is your users log in, the request comes to AWS Transfer Family, and through WAF, if you have a WAF in front of your custom authenticator, all of that control is applied in WAF before it reaches your custom identity provider integration. We have a blog post that walks you through step by step on how you can set this up with AWS Transfer Family and WAF. Another launch that I referred to earlier in my presentation, shared VPC environment. So as you move your environment to AWS, you might have a multi-account strategy, right? Because for many reasons, you might have microservices that are running in different accounts, whether it's for scalability reasons or whether it's for cost allocation or security. There are different reasons some of our customers have cross-account. Now, we launched support for shared VPC, and what that means is that when you create a server as a participant account, you can host that server's endpoint in a shared services VPC, assuming that the owner of that shared VPC shared that subnet with you as the participant account. That way, you can keep your networking resources continue to keep your networking resources in your shared services account and run your server in a different account that might belong to a different business unit. You can assign any security group when you create your endpoint, and you can just automate that entire process of security group assignment using API, CLI, or any CI/CD tools like CloudFormation and Terraform. For this architecture as well, we have a blog post that shows you, why this is important and in what types of environments our customers are using this integration today. So stepping back a bit, when we launched the service, AWS Transfer Family supported file transfers for Amazon S3. I'm pleased to announce that recently we added support for EFS. So you'll see the same networking features, the same authentication, the same access controls that we support for Amazon S3 can now be used for EFS. Some of the use cases where you can use EFS as your storage is if you're managing your own self-managing servers with EFS as the backend today. Or let's say you're a data distributor and you want to share data with end users at scale, right? And you want to apply those fine-grained access controls on your file system and share data sets with your end users. Or you want to migrate these end-to-end file transfer workflows. So let's say in your on-prem environment, you have You've provided SFTP or FTP access to your users, and then you have downstream file-based applications that need to consume this data in real time. Now you can migrate that entire architecture to the cloud end to end and take advantage of a fully managed service like AWS Transfer Family, as well as a fully managed file system, scalable file system like Amazon EFS. The way it works is you set up your users and map them to POSIX identities in EFS. So when they log in, we use those POSIX identities to upload and download files, as well as determine access to files and directories within your file systems. Once the data lands in Amazon EFS, you can use this data with NFS clients on EC2 or with serverless and container applications running in AWS. A quick recap of the service today. We talked about AWS Transfer Family, again, a fully managed service for file transfers over SFTP, FTPS, and FTP for Amazon S3, as well as Amazon EFS. Just a recap of all the benefits of seamless migration, the fully managed that takes away that operational overhead of managing any file transfer infrastructure and gives you that serverless access over all these protocols to AWS storage. The service is secure and compliant for use in your regulated workloads. It natively integrates with different AWS services, so giving you that cloud-native file transfer service. It's cost-effective and simple to use, so it becomes just like a service that you consume. A quick run through some of the resources. We have our product website usage guide. There's a video that talks about the introduction on some of the benefits of the service, and then you can also look at a demo of how it works for a couple of use cases using these protocols, where you either can host the endpoint in your VPC or make it publicly accessible. There's also a tech talk that goes deeper into some of the features that I talked about today. And also finally, our documentation and usage guide that's more technical to get you up and running quickly. Thank you for your time today.